Hello and welcome to the webinar. I'm Stephen Sonsino and I've got a question for you. If you feel that you've reached a plateau in your teaching, what can you do? In a moment, I'm going to introduce our guest and she's going to share 5 self-help strategies to help you reboot your teaching. But at the end of today's webinar, stick around. I'm going to show you how you can benefit from all of her strategies at once. But for now, let me introduce our guest for today. Kristine de Valck, you are Associate Dean of and Director of the PhD program at HEC in Paris. You focus on researching into the internet in general and tons of stuff on social media. You've been published all over the place, British Journal of Management, Decision Support Systems, Journal of Marketing. But the thing that really caught my attention, you've got this Citations of Excellence Award. Now, you have one of the 50 most cited publications, and that's out of something like 13,000 different articles. Brain the size of a planet. This is astonishing. And then on the teaching side, you've done courses. There's a brilliant marketing and social media course on iTunes University. You've got this massive online course at Coursera. But the thing that really, really why I wanted to talk to you today is that you were the academic director of the International Teachers Program, ITP, in 2012-2014, and you're a board member on the International Schools of Business and Management. And I think it's this tension in your life and work between the research and the teaching that I really want to focus on today, because in research, we are taught, and the act of researching, when you publish a paper, you get feedback on it from your colleagues and friends, and then from the peer reviewers who are reviewing it. In research and in publications around research, we're learning constantly by or through the act of doing it. That's not the case in teaching. In teaching, you've seen people do it, and then you try and put it into practice. And maybe over a period of time, you kind of get okay at it. Maybe you even get good at it. And you get feedback from the participants, from your students, or from executives. But there's no integration of feedback in the teaching. So you can go 5 years, 10 years. Some people can go an entire career without actually having any formal feedback or formal input. And that, I guess, raises a question that I want to put to you. And that's, if you are an experienced faculty member, 5 years, 10 years, why
15?
Why would you, or longer, why would you, why should we look again at our teaching? What are the things that maybe signal to us that we could become even better at our teaching? Can you pick that up for me?
Sure, of course, Stephen. I think indeed you already mentioned it yourself, right? So with the teaching, we try things, we get in front of the class, we copy all the teachers that we have seen, we try to find our own voice in that. But apart from the feedback that we will get from our students and participants, there's not a whole lot of opportunities to really reflect on the teaching. If I look at my own case, at one point in time, you can only get so far by reflecting by yourself about what happened in the classroom. I think classroom situations are extremely complex. And when we, at the start of our career, we often think that mastering the content is sufficient to be a good teacher. And I think maybe a lot of us never move beyond that belief. And I'm convinced that it is not just the mastery of the content, but it is everything else that comes in play, let's say, the moment you get into a classroom and you have to deal with the dynamics of you towards the students, of the students amongst themselves, of the student relationship with the topic which you're teaching, which is really irrespective of your mastery of the content, really. And then of everything that contextualizes your teaching, the moment of the day, the week of the month in which you're teaching, the moment that month is located in the student trajectory. So it is an extremely complex phenomenon. And when we look at our own teaching, we always have our glasses. So we have a certain way of interpreting situations because we only see part of the situation. So one of I guess if you ask, so when would a professor know they need to think harder about their teaching? That is maybe when you think that you have an answer to teaching challenges that you face, but you do not seem to really find the answer because students remain not happy, let's say, with your classes, or your teaching evaluations really do not change at all.
So this idea of I guess some sort of stasis, some sort of, that you seem to have perhaps reached a plateau, as you said, marked by the feedback, marked also by some internal, not reservations, but some frustration that they're not getting it even better than you hope because you love the material. Yeah?
Sure, exactly, exactly. I think indeed for me also one of the things that uh, when I plateaued as a teacher here at HEC, it was the moment where I said, okay, so now I need to go out and co-teach with other colleagues because it gives me an opportunity to observe how other people interact in the classroom. A lot of times, and that is something we forget, and maybe even institutions forget that, it's a very, very lonely job being a teacher. Even though you're surrounded by all these students or participants, but it is you with your preparation and you that needs to go into this class. And indeed, I think for me, after maybe about 6-7 years of teaching, I just didn't know how to innovate further by myself. I really thought, okay, now I need to go and see how other colleagues do it and collaborate with colleagues, co-teach with colleagues. But I don't know how it is in many other schools. Here at HEC, co-teaching is not necessarily promoted. If you co-teach, then you get half of the hours on your teaching budgets and stuff like this. So if you're really an efficient teacher, which we are all, because we're also researchers, so we need to protect our times. The school is not necessarily helping professors. I think most schools are not necessarily helping professors in that way.
So those are two great ideas there immediately that one can do, but triggered by this realization that you want to get better at what you do or something needs
Exactly.
to change. So I like the two suggestions that I've already taken from you. One is to observe others at
Exactly.
work.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then secondly, potentially to collaborate or co-teach with them. That strikes
Or
me as...
indeed, you can also still ask people to come and sit in your class. That could be another way of advancing. If we think about what is happening in the classroom as intelligence about classroom situations, we call it within the ITP, let's say we call it situational intelligence about what happens in a classroom. So because you have your classes and you have your we observe a lot what's happening in the classroom, but we do not always observe everything because we're busy with so many things at the same time. If you ask a colleague to sit in, he or she could maybe provide you with an additional perspective of what happened in this classroom, and that could help you to maybe tackle challenges that you don't really grasp, where you don't really understand what is happening there.
Yeah. I think that another brilliant suggestion. I did the ITP at NYU Stern 20 years ago, which I think I told you, and one of the sessions that we had was with Professor Tom Pugel from Stern with Janelle Schubert from Kennedy School of Governance, and they made the observation that actually these are fantastic things to do, but sometimes overcoming that hurdle of asking somebody else, can I come and sit in your class, or and I think the thing they got to particularly was, it's great to invite somebody to come into your class, but unless we're very specific with a request, then they might just come in and say, you're doing fine, or
Exactly.
or give platitudes, or not actually observe the things that you might be looking for. So I think that I'd be intrigued. How would you suggest that we ask these colleagues who, as you say, are precious about the time that they're teaching and so on? Do you have any sort of phrases or an idea for how we might invite someone into the class with a bit more of a specific request there? I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, no, not at all. But so there's two answers maybe to it. The one answer, if you look particularly at the situation that you're asking me, you have an issue, there's something that you feel is not going well in your classroom, you cannot really put your hands on it, then I would invite a colleague to sit in my class. But you need to spend a little bit of time with the colleague up front to tell them, okay, so this is what the course is about. This is, you're going to be sitting in session 3 of a 21 session, give them the context which they need to know. And then you can give your I guess you can give your assessment of what may not be going on, may not be going well, and then you can ask the professor to to look at that, and obviously also not to be blind to anything else, because again, typically we get a bit blinded by what we may think. In all these 15 years that I've been helping colleagues, what we always believe that, most, me included, right, we have a lot of content to share, and we fill our courses with content. So a lot of times we believe that the issue lies there in the content. I didn't do the content well. I should have done more content. Maybe I should have done other content. And it could be that there is really a lot of other things going on. So it's, indeed, you can ask this professor, okay, I believe it is this, but then the professor should be clever enough to say, also be able to say, no, it isn't this. I actually observed this and this and this. And then indeed, to help with that, within the ITP, if we get to that, we propose a teaching lab that is really helping professors with that, with increasing their situational intelligence of what happens in teaching learning situations. This is a method that has been developed, let's say, over the past 30 years, 40 years. Started with two senior colleagues of mine here, now emeritus professors at HEC, which have developed that for our PhD students initially. And then we introduced that in the ITP, this particular procedure, when me and my colleague were doing the direction of the ITP in 2012. So this procedure consists of small groups. So we're 7 or 8 professors, peers, okay, and one professor, and each one will take their turn, because that is important, that you have this reciprocity.
Yes.
So each professor teaches for 20 minutes, okay, on whatever. We don't care, whatever. It can be anything. A lot of them, obviously, they take a little part of a class that they would typically give. But we say the teaching is happening here and now. We're not going to pretend that we're your MBA audience. We're not going to pretend that we're your undergraduate students. You are going to teach us as peers something, so that we really capture that authentic
it's
experience.
Very real, very authentic, as you say. You're not pretending
Exactly.
to, you guys are MBAs, and
Exactly.
That's great.
Because otherwise, again, we make a lot of assumptions on how people may react when they see this. No, we're just going to draw from our own experience. When we sit in this class and we listen to this professor, or we engage with this professor, because it doesn't need to be a lecture, it can be anything. 20-minute learning scenario, okay? And then together, after this 20 minutes, we take a step back and we have a whole procedure in 3 or 4 steps, in which we then analyze what happened. What did I learn? How did I learn this? What helped me learning it? What distracted my learning? Would I have any suggestions on how things could be done differently to make my learning even more engaging or more powerful? And we do it so then per professor, we have a 1-hour session, 20 minutes teaching, 40 minutes analysis, discussion, reflection together, where the professor has an opportunity to give his or her feedback about how he or she experienced the session, so that you as a learner, you learn from that, right? Why did he do this? And you can ask about that. But the professor gets feedback that we never get in our classrooms. In a sense, we always say, now, by hearing back what your learners experience listening to you, this is exactly what students would say to each other in the hallway when they get out of the class. It's the kind of feedback that we do not capture, because the written feedback we get at the end of a class, it's polished, it's very different kind of feedback.
Yes.
So it is an opportunity to listen. And the rule also says that when people provide their feedback to the professor, saying, okay, this is what I experienced. The professor should not interfere, and he should not say, oh yes, but this and this. No, just take it in, listen to what people experience when when they went through your teaching learning scenario. And that is an eye opener for me. I think I've done it. I've sat into maybe 120 of these sessions now, and every time I learned something, because we're human. We make many mistakes, or there's many rituals that we have that maybe don't work so well for learning, really.
Yes, things that we've become comfortable with, or we've copied from a mentor some years ago.
Absolutely.
I think the challenge that for some people is, and it's kind of going back a little bit to the whole content idea, is they're not used, perhaps, to the experience of being a student again, or to getting that kind of that intense, intimate feedback that they experience on the International Teachers Program. Perhaps they're in a heavy content discipline, like perhaps accounting, or perhaps IT in some senses, and yet sometimes it's professors of that kind that really almost, I wouldn't say get the most benefit, but they perhaps got the furthest to travel away from content delivery. I remember walking with a guy called Piero Tedeschi, professor of accounting at Sao Paulo, and I said, look, you're so experienced, you have so many years of experience, why are you here? Why are you on the International Teachers Program? And he said he realized that after such a period of time teaching, that frankly he needed to give himself a kick up the butt. There was there was almost no satisfaction or no motivation for him in the teaching. And sometimes it seems to me that that's equally a good reason for undertaking something like the International Teachers Program, or if you're not going to do the program, to get some feedback from your colleagues. There's also a lot of there's a lot of research material available on teaching. I remember Per Martensen, the chair of your board, wrote this book, which is sadly now out of print, Teaching and Learning at Business Schools. That's a very profound and useful set of ideas if you can get hold of it. But are there any journals that are in this area that people can maybe at least reflect on some of these ideas? There's Teaching and Learning, I think, is one journal at the Academy of Management. Any others spring to mind?
It's that particular journal that also springs to mind directly, because I think it's a pretty high quality journal, right?
Yes.
So that is what we care about.
Yes.
But there is many books also written really about. I have here. I'm just looking here back. I have my whole little set here. How learning works. I do have actually the book by Per. It really depends on what it is that you want, right?
Yes.
So one of the books that I took a lot of benefit from when I did the ITP in 2007, I am an alumni, let's say, of ITP when it was organized at IMD, was a book written by Mel Silberman, who has, I think he has 2 books actually, where he gives a list of tips and tricks to make teaching more interactive. So to make it less about me delivering my lecture, but getting the students to interact with you, and in a sense making teaching more fun for everybody. So that's been particularly a book that's been very useful for me. It's called, the one I have here is 101 More Ways to Make Training Active. So indeed, the first one should be called How to Make Training Active, or something like that. The author is Mel Silberman.
He is was a great, sadly he's now passed away, but I met him at NYU, but I had been using his material before that when I was head of training and active training. And actually, I don't know if anybody in OB is watching, but he's written a great book called People Smart, which I think is much more theoretical and research driven than a lot of his teaching ideas. But there are so many of those, aren't there? 101 training games.
So you have indeed. So if I would also think about the professors that come to ITP, people come really with various motivations, and all these motivations are valid. And let's say you're able to find what you want in the ITP program, because it is a pretty, it's a large program. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So there is professors that typically don't need to be, but typically tend to be professors that are a bit younger, more at the start of their career. So they look for tips and tricks of how can I boost my performance, how what is this thing called teaching, because it's exactly what you say. We have never been trained in it. It's just because we have been sitting in the classroom our lives, our whole self, we're kind of supposed to be able to do it. So they're looking for that, like what can I do to just be more comfortable and to get the job done. What is the job that needs to be done? There's also a lot of professors, exactly as you just mentioned, that after a number of years in their career, they have done it, they've seen it all, they get good grades, but they lose motivation. Okay, so they lose motivation and they want to come. ITP is a place where you can get new inspiration, where I think we also reinvigorate again this idea that sometimes when we have been teaching for a number of years, we can get a bit disenchanted, because every year we have these students that seem not to be as enthusiastic about the topics you teach as you are enthusiastic about it, and they're getting younger every year, and they have different practices, and it's difficult
And this
to
thing.
exactly all this kinds of stuff. So we do get, and it's a risk, I think, that all of us face in this job, that you get disenchanted and that you get disengaged and that you get demotivated because you believe students don't want to learn. And I think at the ITP, one of the big things I learned, and that was even only after 3 years in my career, was that students really do want to learn. And that revelation, let's say again, was important for me to motivate myself again. So the ITP is for that. So to understand again why you chose this job in the first place and what is so nice about it. Then there is all this at the ITP we also try to look forward. There's a lot of things that are changing in our schools, right? With all the technology, it changes how students are in the classroom. It changes how students relate to content. It changes how we are supposed to deliver content. So a lot of professors and even people further in their careers who take management positions relative to that come to ITP to learn about that, and mostly, I guess, to interact with others about it and to discuss. ITP for a lot of us is 2 times 5 days or something like that, where you have the luxury to think about your teaching. Most of the time, most of us have little time to think about our teaching because we have so many other obligations, the research, the publications, management, or we have just so much teaching that, you know, you just need to deliver.
It's a treadmill.
Going to the ITP gives you these moments to take a pause and to think about it. So why do I do it? How do I do it? Have I really thought about how do I do it and which effects that have on my students? How could I do it differently? How do other people do it? Wow, that's interesting. And you talk with people from all these different schools all over the world. So you realize you're not alone, that students are the same everywhere.
Yeah.
And people have creative ideas on how to deal with difficult situations in all respects, in classrooms, but also in management or in your career as a researcher. How do you construct yourself, your role as a teacher therein, which is also in some schools really something you're not allowed to talk about because the focus is so much on research that the teaching is, a bit put aside. So at ITP, you're allowed to be a teacher and you can talk about it.
You obviously have such enthusiasm for this, and also having embedded yourself in the ITP and the delivery and the management for so long, it's easy to see why you're motivated about it. But over the course of that time, is there some trick or something that you keep yourself motivated by? What's your superpower? What's the thing that keeps you going?
Well, it's very personal, I guess. I like variety, and I have the chance to be in a school where we have many different types of audiences. We have the undergraduates, the master's students, we have MBA students, we have in degree programs and non-degree programs and custom programs. So I vary because I have all these student populations have their own challenges, their own strengths and weaknesses, and they teaching particular cohorts of students or particular types of students for a number of years, I feel that then I have no ideas anymore how to be creative. I get fed up or stuff like that. And so I change audiences, not necessarily my topic, but I change audiences. And that has kept me, I think, up to my feet. That has kept me motivated and interested.
Wow. Well, listen, this has been a fantastic run through a handful of ideas. And what I'm taking away from you, first off, if things are going a little bit flat or stale, there's something in your head that gives you a signal there's something going on. Your first suggestion was something like go observe somebody else, get their permission to sit in their class.
Absolutely.
Explore the possibility to collaborate or co-teach with somebody
yes.
that you admire. The question you said was, you kind of forget how to innovate, and that sticks with me. This idea of situational intelligence, to understand there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the class that you're actually blind to a lot of it, so you need somebody else to maybe give you their perspective. If you feel that this is a deep challenge for you, or you want to explore that over a couple of weeks, over a particular year, then the International Teachers Program is one option for you. And we can provide a link to that for those who are interested. I loved the idea of giving people context and briefing, by the way, when they come and sit in your class. That I think is important, rather than just, hey, can you come in and give me some feedback? I think that's too vague. I loved your observations also about the interaction with other men and women who are equally inspired by teaching but are on that journey. And I think you said this in one of the ITP videos. It's the idea of going from being a good teacher to being a great teacher. I absolutely love that. I'm going to steal that. And I think this idea of keeping yourself motivated by, to some extent, changing your audience. If you work with executives, primarily or senior experienced executives, then try teaching with MBAs or vice versa. I think that's a profoundly valuable tip. And I think that if we as faculty can maybe build in our own feedback mechanisms, whether people that we know or going on a program such as ITP, then it might keep us motivated for much longer. Because I think, just to kind of close the loop, in research, every paper that you do gets feedback from your peers. But not every program that you do, every teaching engagement. And yet you might spend 20, 30, 40, 50 hours over a week or over a semester, as much time teaching as you would on a particular paper. And yet, unless you proactively build in feedback, you're not going to get it. So thank you so much. Anything else you wanted to add or chip in before we think about closing this? Any final piece of advice? Hey, what do you wish you'd known when you started that you know now about teaching? That would be a good way to finish.
I don't know. There's one thing I learned from Mel Silberman that I'm still using every time I step in a classroom, and that has been extremely eye-opening. It's a very simple little trick, but if you ask students a question, you do not say, who of you knows this? Because then you get one student putting up their hand and everybody else feels they're off the hook. So when you ask a question to students, you always ask, how many of you know this? So that everybody is supposed to do this. And that it's a little trick, and it changes everything. So I'm using it every time I'm in the class. How many of you would know the answer to this question? Not who knows the answer to the question.
We need a camera in your class. You're superhuman on this. Listen, thank you so much for sparing the time today. It's been an absolute blast. And maybe we'll catch up again very, very soon. Take care.
Thank you, Steven. It was great chatting with you.
ITP is unlike any other teaching program in the world. We want you to come to this program and learn to be the very best teacher that you can be. In this year's cohort, just like most years, we have people from more than 15 countries. We have people from every conceivable academic discipline. But the thing that unites us all is we're all passionate about helping our students learn more and more, better and better.
We teach, we research, we manage programs, so teaching is an important part of our job. I know some ITP alumni, and ITP really transformed some good teachers into outstanding teachers.
We are going through a big change at the university, and we are trying to raise the bar in teaching. And for me, it's nice to come here and have the opportunity to share with my colleagues what we can do to improve learning. It's really nice to exchange experiences and have all these very good professors giving you feedback. From now on, it seems that I'm a part of a big network that I can feel comfortable asking for help.
We coach each participant for an hour, and we ask them to teach something to a real live audience in a way that's different than the way they normally teach. It's a chance to really begin to grow as a teacher.
Within this program, we get to see a whole range of different methods and approaches. There is not one normative way of teaching, there is many possible solutions. The ITP offers a safe space to get comfortable with, for example, teaching without slides. A lot of us dream about that, but we don't dare to do it. Here you get the opportunity to practice that, and you get to see other teachers doing it and doing it well.
I discovered a very inspiring idea about the importance of the voice, the tone and the volume in the classroom, and how to use these tools in our class management.
It was really fascinating to realize that my behavior in the classroom is my deliberate choice, and I can govern it. My satisfaction, my job satisfaction, students' efficiency depends on me, and it was really fantastic and empowering.
We in the education business live in a changing world today. There's digital, there's pressure from funding bodies, there are all kinds of waves that we face. One of the things that ITP does for its faculty is keep them current on what these changes are and how best to adapt to them so they're ready to stay on top of their game.
We have a 1-week module, and the second module is the best part of a week. And then between those two modules, we have people working on projects. We ask them to, okay, take away the skills you've learned, try and transform the way you teach by exploring some new teaching styles, then come back, you'll show us what you've done, and we'll develop those skills further.
I can say that ITP is a sort of an adventure. You are in a safe environment where you have lots of interesting ideas and lots of constructive feedback on how you do things and how you can improve them.
If you have had some successes and have had some failures, you appreciate how some tools and instruments can help you to improve. So absolutely, I think it's a must after 5-6 years of teaching.
What we get on ITP is good teachers, and what we hope for and what we want them to be when they come out of the ITP is to be great teachers.